Okay, hello everyone. We are in our next case study, Malaysia. Okay, so Malaysia is going to be a rather interesting case study, a little bit different from Indonesia, Burma, and Philippines. Okay, I think it's a little bit more similar to Philippines than Indonesia and Burma. Okay, and I will try to explain it in this lecture. So the focus for this lecture, okay, is that, Malaysia can only be considered a very temporary maximum government, only 2 years, okay? So very, very short-lived, all right? And so therefore, overall, it is still very much a valid democracy. Okay, so essentially, Malaysia will be used to show how democratic governments, albeit modified. So later on, you find that there are a lot of limitations, all right, to this democratic system. But nonetheless, it's still overall a democracy, okay? So how democratic practices have resumed after these 2 years of maximum government. So we are using Malaysia, all right, to look at the effectiveness of phase 3, all right, looking at phase 3, and therefore like how democratic governments, whether they were able to maintain stability. Okay, so let's quickly look at the maximum government phase. Okay, just 2 years, all right. Yes, where we last left Malaysia, right, it was after the 1969 KL riots, and Malaysia became a maximum government. So what's the evidence, all right? So if we look at apply criterion 2, okay, we will see that parliament was suspended. The so-called government was run by a National Operations Council. It is not elected by the people, okay, and it was chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister, okay. And then the government also came to be dominated by the Malay Ultras. Okay, so therefore, again, it's kind of like maximum government because it is the power is in the hands of a very small elite. Okay, so the NOC's principal contribution in that 2 years, okay, so the biggest contribution was that they created this thing called a National Consultative Council. National Consultative Council, okay, where they are supposed to examine everything under the sun, all the important things, ethnic, political, economic, cultural problems affecting national unity. Because remember, the 1969 KL riots, right, is an example of a country that's been torn apart because of race, right? Because they are like racial riots. Okay, so the Malays turning against the Chinese and vice versa. All right, so therefore it definitely is detrimental. Okay, it's fatal to national unity. So the Malaysian government need to do some serious soul searching, okay, and really try to rebuild this national unity so that such racial riots will never happen again. Right, so what is the evidence of this National Consultative Council, which was formed during the period of maximum government, okay, being an example of maximum government? So again, criterion 2, okay, so this NCC, right, it was not elected, all right, so they're like, it's like a representatives, so it's like functional groups kind of thing. So it's a little bit similar to the Golkar Party of Indonesia, okay, Suharto's Indonesia, right? And then it's also rather similar to like even the BSPP, okay, from Nevis, Burma. Okay, so they're elected and they represented like different professions and all that like interest groups. Okay, it was intended as a forum, so they discuss things only. Okay, and then after that, the most important outcome, okay, of such discussions, right, was that they led to the confirmation of this very important thing in Malaysian political life, called the Constitutional Amendments and Sedition Act. Okay, that will be passed by the newly resumed parliament. Okay, when they finally open for business, all right, in 1971. Okay, so what is this Sedition Act all about? All right, so basically in this Sedition Act, right, it drastically limited the scope of political discussion or curtailed political discussion. So therefore, in Malaysia, it is like illegal. It is an act of sedition. All right, to discuss the special position of the Malays and other indigenous groups, the use of the Malay as national language, the citizenship rights of any ethnic group, and the position of the Malay ruler. So it's like you cannot even, it's not say oppose, you can't even discuss, right? You can't even talk about it. So it's like totally entirely taken out of public space or even like private space, I guess. All right. So this would be what the Malay government or the National Consultative Council at that point thought that would be very important, okay, to have, all right, to ensure that there's no such thing as like racial riots, because to preserve national unity, in a sense. Okay, so therefore, this would be like the legacy of the maximum government period, okay, in Malaysia. So we have the Sedition Act. So that's the best thing that they could come up with in that 2 years. All right, so let's look at post 1971, the political structure. So Parliament reconvened in 1971. All right, so therefore, when you have Parliament is appointed by Parliament. It's made up of people who are appointed by the people, right? So therefore, it is an act of democracy. Okay, the NOC was renamed the National Security Council. All right, so now it's mostly like trying to deal with like security threats, internal security threats, principally the communists. Okay, the armed forces return to their strictly military role. Okay, so that's a very important indicator of whether it's a maximum government or not. Okay, the NCC retain, all right, because yeah, they need to discuss communal issues because remember they had a Sedition Act, right? So the parliament could not discuss. Okay, so only the NCC can do it because they are the one who passed the law. So they can do it above the law, I guess. There was this setting up of a Department of National Unity, all right, where they are meant to like implement this national ideology called Rukun Negara. We will be learning about Rukun Negara in National Unity topic. It will be the first topic of JC2. Okay, and then most importantly, we have this very infamous thing called New Economic Policy. I kind of, you might have heard about it. All right, it's kind of famous or infamous according to how you view it. All right, but yeah, it was also one of the legacies okay, of the maximum government period. Okay, where we have this new economic policy. It is meant to eradicate poverty among all races and eliminate the identification of race with occupation. So it's an act of like economic nationalism. You try to reduce the disparity, economic disparity, okay, between the different races. Okay, so this will be the 5 national principles of Rukun Negara. So the Rukun Negara, right, is actually very much modeled after the Pancasila in Indonesia. So Pancasila got 5 things, right, 5 principles. So Rukun Negara also got 5, right? So this would comprise the national ideology of Malaysia. Right, belief in God, loyalty to king and country, supremacy of the constitution, rule of law, and being, good boys and good girls. Okay, so let's find out more about what this NEP is all about. So it's actually an ambitious and controversial socio-economic restructuring affirmative action program. Wow, that's lengthy, right? It's launched by the Malaysian government. Okay, it supposedly ended in 1990, but the essence of it still continued because they just changed the name to National Development Policy, right? It's actually an affirmative action, okay, meant to uplift the Malays, right? It has they will have like a special quotas, all right, in universities or even in like government agencies and even in private companies. Like for example, you want to have you want to list your company, all right, in the stock exchange, then you must make sure that you must find Malay partners, all right, so that it's like even the Chinese businesses, right, they must find some way, all right, to bring in Malay partners to work together with them so that there's some kind of quota system going on. Okay, another component of this national economic policy, right, was that there's also a lot of like policies, all right, to improve agriculture, okay, in the rural states, the one that's more agrarian based, such as like Kelantan and Terengganu. Okay, so they are more like the kampongs and where they do more farming, right? So most of these people who are farmers, right, they are the Malays. All right, so there are also more attempts to try and like to improve the irrigation, to improve the seeds and the fertilizers, whatever, all right, so that they could plant better crops, earn more money. Okay, and this is also another way to like try and uplift their economic status. So basically it's kind of to help the Malays because they realize that there's actually this growing gap between the Chinese and Malays, and that was one of the like the reasons okay, the causes of the racial riots, because there's a lot of resentment. All right, so therefore they said, okay, because we don't want such resentment to fester, they have to close the gap. All right, they justify it by that. All right, so therefore it's really trying to uplift, okay, the Malays, all right, in the affirmative action program. Okay, so the Bumiputra refers to sons of the soil, it refers to the Malays. Okay, so a lot of policies that were being done, all right, through urbanization, and it also created a middle class, a Bumiputra middle class. Okay, and this Bumiputra middle class, okay, would serve as another base of support, all right, for the Alliance Party. Okay, and it might even like overshadow, okay, that of the but support given by the non-Malays. Okay, so this shows like there's a shift, okay, towards of the Alliance Party, all right, of the government ruling body then to want to cultivate more support from the Malays. Okay, and this emergent Malay middle class was wholly dependent on the government for his continued growth. Its evaluation, yes, in some sense it did uplift the Bumiputras, alright, so therefore there was a reduction of disparity. Okay, however, they actually set some quota, like they must reach 30, like Malays occupying 30%, all right, of economy, okay, but they did not manage to hit that target. It's only at 20%, all right. However, you know, the Malay class really was uplifted, all right. They really became more prosperous, okay. So and there was really, you know, development to the rural areas of Malaysia, okay. So therefore it's kind of like a mixed record. Okay, so therefore there were like some good things, some bad things. Okay, so not forgetting the fact that it is also a little bit like discriminatory, all right, positive and negative sense lah, all right. The positive sense is that, well, it tries to uplift the plight of the Malays, okay, their socioeconomic status, okay, but it might be at the expense, all right, of other races. Okay, so therefore, what we see, right, is that Malaysia has become a society, okay, whereby Malays were given special economic privileges, all right, and it has become like entrenched, okay, it's become formalized, okay, it's no longer just an informal arrangement thingy, but it become formalized. So therefore, the Malaysian political system is now racial socialism, right? So therefore, it is also very clear that there's a domination by the Malays. Okay, this would be Malaysia's strategy, all right, to keep national unity, all right, to maintain harmony, to maintain unity, and therefore political stability in Malaysia. Okay, because they said that, you know, previously, all right, when they didn't have this, okay, there was a huge is that disparity between the Chinese and Malays that led to the racial riots. Okay, so if once you go back to, you know, a democratic system and they continued the old system, all right, it will lead to another racial riot kind of thing. Okay, so they were very determined, all right, to curb the issue at its roots. Okay, and this would be to address the disparity, okay, between the Chinese and Malays. All right, so are we interested in NDP 4? Okay, so it's basically criterion 3. All right, so we're looking at the government's ability to maintain political stability by promoting social economic development. Okay. So let's look at more other criteria, which is criterion 2. Okay, so looking at phase 3, all right, so maximum government has ended. All right, so they went back to parliamentary democracy, and let's see how you know, this post 1971 political landscape looked like. Okay, so therefore there was a 1969 elections. The legacy was that the Malay fears that, you know, they will be dominated, they will be like undermined, whatever, like taken over by the Chinese, whatever. All right, so that's why once they managed to stabilize everything, okay, they decided to take things into their hands and come up with certain structures. All right, they'll ensure that Malay dominance would be entrenched. All right, so just now I also said that, you know, the Malaysian government began to be dominated by the Malay ultras, right? So the Malay ultras, basically they were like Malay nationalists. Okay, so they are very pro Malay rights. Okay, so therefore because of their agenda, all right, so they were able to push forth such policies, all right, in Parliament after 1971. So just now there was the Sedition Act, right? So that was being passed in the 1971 Constitution. Okay, and therefore, that alone, it kind of reduced the number of issues that the opposition could discuss. So the opposition might include like, you know, political parties that might enjoy the support, all right, from the minority races, right? So therefore, the political parties, these opposition, they can't even like talk about such issues, okay, because it's an act of sedition. So therefore, there's like nothing much for them to draw people to attend the mass rallies, for example. So you can imagine our Workers' Party, okay, if you're not able to talk about cost of living, not able to talk about, you know, foreign talent on GST, then what else? What else can you talk about? Right, so I guess there's a way for them to reduce the attractiveness, all right, or to reduce the power of the political opposition. Okay, so yes, we have to admit and we have to say that, yeah, there was really a democracy, in fact, that, yeah, after 1971 basically elections took place all the time, every few years. All right, that what happened in Singapore. Okay, and there was also, like, you know, campaigning. Okay, however, opposition parties were not allowed to hold open air rallies, so public rallies. However, Barisan National ministers were allowed to hold mass rallies under the guise of delivering official addresses. So again, they try to like weigh things in their favor simply because they're the ruling government. But does it mean that then that like Malaysia will control democracy? Okay, so therefore a maximum government. So is it that, you know, in Malaysia is also a controlled democracy? All right. Actually no. All right. So yes, I do see characteristics, so we are not blind, right? So definitely there are characteristics of maximum government. It's something similar to the tactics employed by Marcos, employed by Suharto, okay? But overall, right, no one has actually called Malaysia, openly called Malaysia a maximum government, no one. Okay, so it's still widely known, all right, that Malaysia is still rightly recognized, okay, as a parliamentary democracy, largely democratic, okay, largely democratic. Okay, so in order to prove my point, okay, so I want to refer you back to the definition of maximum government. So these are all the characteristics, right? Okay, so you can see, right, that whether Malaysia fit the bill or not, okay, well, whether it's power is in the hands of an elite but acquiring maximum influence, it is an alliance party. Later they form themselves into Barisan Nasional lah, but it is a coalition party. So yes, UMNO is the leader of the party, but UMNO must work with other political parties within the ruling government. Alright, so it's not a maximum government in a sense. Okay, like for example, PAP is just PAP. Okay, PAP did not have a coalition party kind of thing. Right? So therefore, it is still a democratic structure, a process. Okay, next, depoliticization of public life. Okay, yes, especially under Mahathir, all right, there were attempts to depoliticize the press, the students, even the judiciary. However, all right, in Malaysia, right, there still existed alternative political structures, like for example, the Sultan, like for example, the Islamic preachers and all that. All right, so therefore, the ruling government did not 100% dominate the political landscape and political discourse. Okay, so there's still like opposition, so there are still opposing views, and of course, you know, there are still other opposition parties. They will never like, you know, so-called suppress and they undermine. Okay, like what happened during Marcos's rule in Philippines. Okay, so therefore, we still see other voices. Okay, so it's still not a maximum government. Right, yeah, they still have political opposition, so they still very gamely ran against, you know, the Barisan Nasional every election, try to win some seats, okay, and they have regular elections. So therefore, actually, Malaysia, okay, can be considered a parliamentary democracy, albeit modified. Yes, we can. This it's not like a pure democracy in a sense, in like a Western style sense. All right, so there are some modifications. We have to acknowledge that, okay, and these modifications do look suspiciously like maximum government, but overall, because we will take things holistically, right? Okay, overall, it does not look like a maximum government in totality, especially when we compare it to like the real maximum governments. All right, so therefore, yeah, you please accept that, okay, that Malaysia cannot be a maximum government. It's still a parliamentary democracy. At most, you can say that it exhibits elements of maximum government. All right, so let's look at more like evidence lah, so-called. Why is a democracy not maximum government? Okay, so like for another evidence is that the military became depoliticized, so they don't have any political power, so they went back to doing their military stuff. Okay, and then what else? Oh yeah. So UMNO, you know, tried to form another coalition, a bigger one. So remember, our alliance party is just UMNO plus MIC plus MCA, right? So there's just 3 of them. Okay, but then in 1974, right, they formed BN. All right, so right now we also have BN. They are not the. Okay, I'm not sure whether they are the ruling government now. Malaysia politics right now is a little bit messy. Okay, but we definitely see the rise of BN again currently. Okay, but they started in 1974. All right, and BN expanded beyond the original 3 members of Alliance Party, and now they managed to find another 6 friends. So 9 of them together form the BN. So it's a coalition. All right, but of course it is still led by UMNO. Okay, so it's a coalition. Okay, the purpose of coming of this BN, all right, is obviously to reduce political opposition. So like trying to co-opt, you know, opposition parties to form, you know, a bigger coalition. Okay, increase the non-Malay support base and boost the role of UMNO in the coalition. Because if you have like more parties, right, then you're actually like reducing the power of the what do you call it, the other members, right? Because there are more of them, so therefore it's easier to like sow discord and divide and conquer, I guess. All right, and UMNO can clearly be the leader, all right, in this coalition. Okay, so they still like blue, I guess. All right, so we become from a sailboat, okay, to what do you call it, a weighing scale. Okay, so from Alliance Party to Barisan Nasional. Okay, UMNO because they also want to retain obviously the support of the Muslims, right? Because the majority population, right? So they promoted Islam at the national level. Okay, they also co-opted leaders of the Islamic groups. Okay, so one of the most prominent of which will be Anwar Ibrahim. Okay, so later on we'll learn more about him again. Okay, and therefore this demonstrated UMNO's ideological flexibility. Okay, so really trying to manage both the Malay and non-Malay support bases. Right. However, there's still some limitations. Okay, like for example, the press was increasingly muzzled. Right. Then after that, there's this 1975 amendment to the Universities and Colleges Act, right, to reduce political activism. Okay, on the part of students. Okay. And then there's this amendments to Societies Act that curbed freedom of association. Okay, so therefore, you can still see that even a democratic government, all right, can still employ characteristics that's similar to maximum governments to try and maintain political stability. Okay, then the BN was still a dominant party, but it was never a one party state, not like Singapore. Okay, there was always the presence of political opposition, just that the political opposition they were never like strong enough, all right, to counter the Malaysian the BN lah. Okay, so therefore the most dangerous challenge to political stability, right, rose from within UMNO. So therefore, the most serious threat is not like a centrifugal threat, okay, of like communist minority uprising kind of thing, okay, but it's more of internal disunity within UMNO itself. Okay, so it's a own game kind of thing, right? And then later on, we will see there are 2 episodes, okay, that reflected the significance of Malay unity to political stability. All right, so therefore, how is it so important, right, for them to want to maintain like internal unity, all right, so as to maintain political stability. Okay, so let's see whether this looks like maximum government. Admittedly, Malaysia, especially under Mahathir, did increasingly resemble that of maximum government, especially in terms of criterion 2. However, overall, Malaysia remained to reinforce again, a democratic country, okay, because of these following reasons. There's still alternative political structures. Okay, so there's still like so-called contenders. Military not politicized, regular elections continue to be held. The nature of UMNO, BN itself, right, was one that was built on consensus, albeit led by UMNO. Okay, so therefore, Malaysia remained a parliamentary democracy, but at most exhibited elements of maximum government. Okay, so therefore, in a sense, you can say that if you want, you can in your essay, okay, you can also use these elements of maximum government in Malaysia, right? Okay, to further reinforce the importance and effectiveness of maximum governments in maintaining political stability. All right, to show that like even democratic governments, all right, needed to resort to these measures, like for example, the one on like the press freedom, student activism and stuff. Okay, so even then, therefore this further reinforce the importance of maximum government, that such strategies were also very attractive to even democratic governments. Okay, but remember, Malaysia cannot be a maximum government, yeah, all right. Overall, it is still a democracy. Okay, so in the next lecture, okay, we'll look at the alternative political structures and the internal disunity as a challenge to political stability. Okay, so therefore, the biggest challenge facing Malaysia, right, was not the centrifugal threats, because after the 1969 KL riots, the Malaysian government was like very effective in coming out of the Sedition Act and NEP, for example, okay, to make sure that such racial riots will never happen again. Okay, so therefore it's more about internal disarray, okay, amongst the political parties, okay, that presented a challenge to political stability. Okay, but we'll talk more about it next lecture.